Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're off to a great start this morning. Now it is my absolute pleasure to introduce two of our very own thriving entrepreneurs who will share their thoughts and experiences from Startup Nation to regional unicorns. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome Mr. Cheng, co-founder and group CEO of Carsome, and Mr. Kamarul Muhamed, founder and group CEO of Aerodyne Group, together with Mr. Khoo Chuang, managing director, KHC Ventures Sdn Bhd, who will be moderating the session. Over to you, Mr. Khoo.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the introduction, and very kind and a very warm welcome and good morning to everybody. Just want to flesh out your introductions a little bit. Cheng, of course, in just a very few short years, I remember meeting him in the early 2010s. He's built Malaysia's first tech unicorn, Southeast Asia's most valuable and largest digital automotive marketplace, with his latest corporate developments, which we will explore later with Patrick Grove of Catcha. He's, of course, aiming to become and to build the Amazon of automobiles in the region, even while exploring a public debut of his business, possibly even in New York. I would also like to welcome Kamarul Muhamed. He's also the founder and group chief executive of Aerodyne Group. He's incidentally, or maybe not incidentally, celebrating his birthday today. We're talking to him on a very special occasion. Kamarul, a very happy birthday to you, and thank you for talking to us this morning. Kamarul, of course, has built Aerodyne into the second largest drone services company in the world, in a market that is estimated to be worth about $127 billion. That's with a B, not an M, so not small numbers. I'd like to start this session off with maybe both Eric and Kamarul giving us a little short primer, maybe 2 to 3 minutes about their business, because who better to explain their outfit than themselves. So maybe we start with Eric, and maybe you start, Eric. Thank you.
Sure, thanks, Khoo. And first of all, happy birthday, Kamarul. Yeah, I think what's Carsome is we started in 2015. So very early on, 6 years ago, we started off to tackle a pain point where people are facing difficulties to sell their cars. And we know that, it's true, right? When it comes to buying and selling cars, there's a lot of lack of transparency, distrust in the market. So we went on to provide solutions to, help remove that frictions in the transaction process. And we did that through technology. We did that through the expansions that we have with our retail centers so that we can reach out to more customers. And of course, over time, we expanded from Malaysia to Indonesia, Thailand, and now on the monthly basis, we're selling close to 10,000 cars, which make us easily the largest used car trading platform in the region. So I think what we are envisioning the platform to be right now is to become a used car e-commerce platform, which you can buy and sell cars completely online, something that's already been done in many other places in other markets, right? So we want to bring it to Southeast Asia, and that's what we are working for in the next couple of years.
Great. Okay, so on to you, Kamarul. You're muted. Yeah.
We are a DTQ company. In simple terms, drone tech, data tech, and digital transformation. So in short description, we use drone technology and data technology to disrupt our clients' operation, help them run their businesses faster, better, and cheaper. And who are our customers? Most of them are infrastructure providers, from power line to wind turbine to solar farms and all that. So we use our drone technology to do the asset management and inspections of them, replacing the traditional methods of using helicopters and people walking the lines and all that. And the other things that we use drones for example, agriculture today. Agriculture is relying mostly on labor, foreign labor as well, mostly. So we are moving this to fully automation, using our drones to do work that used to be done by human, which is not very efficient. Some of them are very dangerous as well. So we are looking at efficiency increase of 20 to even 50%. And while doing this, in a huge disruptive manner as well, using the data tech. So we can predict, we can see things, what our eyes cannot see. Usually you have to take it to the lab to see the health of your trees. Now using our drone, we can tell in real time the health of the trees, for example, right? And then on top of that, we do a lot of other things as well. Those are the two main things, infrastructure and agriculture, but we also take care of, for example, border security. We use some really cool stuff, futuristic stuff, swarm intelligence. So now we think of drones as no longer, a flying device, but rather smart aerial robots. So this swarm of drones can be flying together, collaborating with one another, discussing with one another on how to improve their operation. So in the future, in the near future, we no longer operate these drones. We just give it mission objective, and they will take care of whatever that we are telling it to do. Really. So that's the future, and in a nutshell of what we do.
Yeah, so gentlemen, it's about the journey, right? And I mean, in the case of Eric, it's been just very short, 6 years. I think Kamarul, for yourself as well, generally speaking, you've gone into the top 3 in the world in terms of drone services. It's about the entrepreneurial journey. And, sometimes we think about North America and NASDAQ as the place where you can grow unicorns in a very short space of time. But maybe starting with Eric, how did you manage to grow a unicorn and basically with $1 billion valuation in 6 years? What conditions allowed you to build that to that size in that space of time?
Yeah. So I think when we first started off to create the company, we didn't think too far, right? Like we know it's a large market, we know it's a 60 billion market that we can navigate through, and there's a lot of room for us to grow. But we never set aside like say, hey, we want to be a unicorn, but rather we want to create a platform that we can continue to scale as we see it, right? So I think, and along the way, when we see the services that we provide, starting to find a product market fit, people feel, really happy about the service and starting to think that this is a better solution compared to the pre-existing ones, then it's give us that pathway, right, to think about, expanding this to more customer base, growing it a lot more larger as a platform. And we think of it in the way of a Southeast Asia context, right? That there's Malaysia, there's Singapore, there's Indonesia and Thailand. And you see that certain countries, the market dynamics are very similar. At the same time, a huge population, car population more specifically, that wants to be able to trade car in the same manner that we are providing. So I think when we measure the size of the market and as we expand, then we started to realize that there's an opportunity for us to build this to be a multi-billion-dollar business. There's an opportunity for us to bring this innovation, this technology, and not just limited to being a trading platform that just do buy and sell cars. There's a lot of frictions in the whole process, like financing, insurance, after sales. A lot of these are not easily accessible in the used car market. So, and maybe they're not even there. Some cars don't have a warranty and whatnot, and there's no transparency in the car pricing, the car condition. So I think that provided us that understanding to see, these are the things that we want to build on the platform, and that in turn would help us benefit more customers. And by building, good products, making people better off, you build a good business model out of that. And eventually that become really huge. And I think that's how somehow along the way we find ourselves to be on a path to achieving that $1 billion valuation, right? So, and I guess, being in Malaysia has always been a benefit for us, given the fact that with how the market is very similar to like Indonesia and Thailand. So when we test the product, when we test the things that we felt would be useful in the market, it resonated well in the countries like Indonesia and Thailand too, where it's slightly different, right? If you come from an angle, like say you're from Singapore, we all know it's always been an outlier in terms of everything from the market standpoint to the culture itself, right? And I think that's how I think about, having a business starting from Malaysia. It put us on the ground to quickly expand into other countries that can also help us capture more market share. And that benefits in the perspective of us being a regional champion, right, rather than just a country leader.
Yeah, so of course in the media world we've heard of Carsome, and even in the early days you were quite accessible and you did a lot of press. So generally speaking, the market is aware of what you're doing, Eric. But with Aerodyne, Kamarul, you're all. I mean, forgive me if I'm if I was a little less aware of Aerodyne. But of course, I was hearing about you in terms of just references from friends who have come across you guys. But what I read about you guys is that you're basically building Aerodyne on cash flow for a very long time, and you only recently, generally speaking, raised from the public markets or from investors, quite late on in the journey. How did you, and you got into a top 10 ranking according to the third-party research providers. You got into the top 10 on your own steam, right? So that's a big deal, Kamarul. Can you talk about the early journey?
Sure. See, when we started, I would say we were one of the global pioneer in using drone for enterprise use. So we are more of a B2B. So perhaps that's why we are more of a low-key. So in the beginning, especially what we do is actually helping enterprises and all that. But it wasn't easy because when we started in 2016, there was not really the drones itself were not even ready. The industry, the market also is not really appreciative of this new idea. How can you use drone to help me run my businesses? How can you help me? I've been in this business for 20, 30 years, and you are newcomers that come in and telling us a better way of doing things, right? So it took us about 2 years or so. We realized that drones are really IoT device, right? So IoT, just like IR 4.0, is actually about providing that real-time information and continuous improvement, you see. So we started that, we started in Malaysia, and fortunately, the Malaysian companies were very receptive. We started first with Petronas, then we started to do work for Samdabi, for TNB and all that, and the business sort of just grew from there very quickly. And from almost year one, we were already profitable. And we basically just grow from our own cash flow, right? And it is only in 2017 then an idea came to us, hey, why don't we start venturing outside of Malaysia? We were growing very nicely in Malaysia. We were already the biggest in Malaysia by 2018. So we went to Australia to start with, really more to see the readiness of our technology, because at that time we have already developed some data technology to give that insights and intelligence into the drone data. So lo and behold, it was a very nice surprise to us when we went to Australia that nobody were doing it even in Australia. At that time, all those drone players were really mom and pop kind of company that were doing visuals and all that. So we hit it off in Australia, and immediately within just a couple of months, we closed big deals in Australia. So that sort of inspires us that, hey, there's a good market globally, and we started to grow. So from Australia, we went to the Middle East, we went to Europe and all that, and it was all self-funded at that time through the profit that we generated internally, until we took us to the next level. Then we realized that, hey, we need to be thinking about doing M&As to accelerate our growth. That was when we raised our Series A, and out of that, we acquired a few companies in Europe as well. We entered Japan at that time, and when we closed our Series B, now it allows us to be in 12 countries already globally, and with presence in another 35. So that has been our growth. And our main focus in growing is really in building the team and the technology, because at the end of the day, for us, it's actually about building that deep tech that differentiates us from our competitors. So that has been our journey. Now we are at this stage where we'll be raising our next round, perhaps next year, our Series C next year.
Wow. Okay, we'll talk about valuations in a little while. But for 5 or 6 year old companies, and it's quite a short space of time, it's all about the growth. It's all about scale. It's all about trying to make the confluence of funding and penetration and adoption in the market work. And for a lot of companies, they don't get to traverse that journey so successfully because sometimes it takes the market a little bit longer to adopt their product or service. Maybe just talk in terms of fundraising terms, right? Maybe starting with Eric. What was your strategy in terms of getting the right amount of capital to start the business, to build out the platform? And obviously there was a lot of capital requirements in the early days. What kind of sacrifices did you have to make? Maybe in terms of equity relinquishment. Did you borrow money from friends and family? What were those early days looking like?
Sure. So before we started the company, we were fully bootstrapped, right? So like myself, my partner JT, both of us just used basically all of our money to start the MVP of the platform. And the external fundraising was only done starting from 6 months into the business. So we kind of been using our money until we first received the check coming from the investors, right? The seed round investors, which are 500 startups and the we will run. That was up almost after a year later. So we have to basically, use our own money, and at the same time, trying to get revenue from the platform to reinvest into the business. So it was a time that, we were mostly bootstrapped, but I think the thinking behind building the business has always been going to a path that we would eventually get venture capitalists to invest. I think given the fact that when we are building the platform, we can see that the growth would be coming, and to capture the growth as fast as possible to accelerate our plan, there's a need for us to fundraise in order to achieve that. And these are the perspective of either from hiring a bigger team, expanding the infrastructure of the business physically, and then also marketing and I think later on to the fundraising, like the recent one that you have seen, that are mostly like also part of it would be for M&A, like acquisition and investment. But I think in many ways, if you look at all of these things, right, the perspective of getting all this done is to really accelerate the growth of the platform, because every other year we have a milestone, and we've been growing fairly well. Almost every other year we are at about 2 to 3 times of the year before. So that to basically support that growth as we capture more market share. And I think that was one of the way that we think would be helpful for us to achieve that in a faster pace. So that's why I think on the fundraising, and we've been talking to a lot of investors. Investors are familiar with us. I think given the fact also around the world there's similar models, right? They're doing similar things in other parts of the world, which is interesting because we have a lot of data points. We know that what works, what doesn't work. We speak to some of them as well. And at the same time, if we look at the metrics that we have internally, we are one of the top 1-2 when it comes to our cost efficiencies, our business efficiencies, the conversion gain among the rest of the players. So I think that gave us the confidence, right, that we are able to accelerate the growth, and hence we went into the fundraising route to help us achieve that. And along the way also, fortunately also we get some good partners.
Yeah, but just staying on Eric for a little while, in those early days, obviously the growth 2 to 3, 4 times X is off a very, very low base because you're just starting out, right? Obviously. What kind of stories did you have to tell? What kind of sacrifices did you have to make in terms of relinquishing equity, which is very, very expensive, very painful? Did you make those sacrifices early on? What kind of, to the extent that you can, the visibility on that front?
Yeah, sure. So I think equity is always more expensive compared to debt, right? Because you're giving out shares of the company, and it's going to worth a lot more, right, as we build and grow the business. So I think in our perspective, we always set like how much we want to achieve with this amount of fundraise, and we usually time in a manner that what are the milestones we're trying to reach in the next 12 to 24 months. And that gave us a visibility as well, like how much you actually need in order to get this milestone done. Right. So and that's why it kind of cascade into not fundraising too much just because you can, but rather you are really getting the funding to help you achieve some near to mid-term goal that bridge the gap, right, to the long-term vision that you have for the business. Right. So and in that context, you don't exactly give up that much anymore because you're not trying to raise and give up a big portion of the company, right? Rather, you're inviting partners to be along with this journey. Even if the support not just on a monetary perspective, but also in terms of advice on building a scalable platform, a strong team, and any other partnerships and network they could introduce to the company. So I think with that in mind, that you basically is having very calculated type of funding risk to see what you are willing to take in order to achieve the next 12 to 24 months. So it's a very structured approach. So that's why we don't actually burn too much or lose out too much of the controlling stake, right, in the company.
Yeah, Kamarul, what about you? Because drones are expensive, right? Just to procure the drone, and obviously you need a lot of them and a lot of drivers and a lot of analysts. What were those early days looking like for you? How did you bootstrap this business? Presumably you did bootstrap the business.
Yeah, we did. Actually, between me and my wife, my co-founder, we put in about RM1 million to begin with. And we completely used it up within 3 months, the first million, getting the drones and all that. But like I said earlier, fortunately, we were able to actually make a healthy margin in the beginning, doing a different thing to what we are doing right now with drones. So that enables us to grow. But as mentioned earlier, we were the outlier in terms of bringing the drone services into the industrial application. So that was when the focus was really into the software side, on the analytics side. And that's actually where we are now today as well. More focus now is actually on technology development rather than, on the drone hardware itself. Drones are a commodity you can buy from anywhere. So what we really do is actually add intelligence to those drones. So our key focus is really on AI, on developing the software, the deep analytics and all that. So if in the beginning, I mentioned earlier about our M&A strategies, and to date we have completed more than about 7 M&As already globally. So in the beginning, what we did, and that's actually the result of our fundraising to give us the market access, to allow us to enter, in the past, we went to Europe, we went to Japan, and many other places as well, India already right now. So our initial fundraise was really to enable us to execute this M&A exercise, to give us market access, to allow us to plant our flag and build those businesses in this other region. Our vision from day one was really to be a global player. There is also something that, because drone industry is new, unlike Eric, there's a proven solutions everywhere around the world as well. So we were defining the industry, right? The adoption in the beginning was really, really nice. Then it sort of stagnant a little bit. Even 2019, there was already a drone bubble burst. The industry started to consolidate. A lot of the early players that came in actually folded. There's folded after raising hundreds of millions, because the adoption was slower than expected. But of course we survived primarily because we were doing the right thing, I believe, because we were already delivering the thing that our clients really needed, and our cost structure is actually lower as well. So the fundraise, if in the past it was for market access, now the next round and what we are doing right now is actually about developing deeper into the technology. So our plan, our strategy now is actually to build this leading edge next generation drone data solution.
So operationally, right, Kamarul, it's not so much like almost like a reverse engineer for people like Eric, because there's a template for them to go on from, right? Obviously, you tweak it for the local marketplace. But for you guys, operationally, it seems a bit tougher because maybe you've got to find the drone drivers, you've got to train them as well. There's safety requirements, there's also regulation over drones. Different jurisdictions have different regulations. And then, of course, you've also got to raise at the same time to go and do your M&A. And valuations could be an issue because, on what basis do you value the business? Is it a capex, utility kind of valuation, or is it on the AI and basic software and data side, which I think came a bit later, right? So how did you traverse those issues?
Right. I mean, in the beginning, there was a very clear growth trajectory. We were like doubling our growth every year as well in the beginning. So there was a clear trajectory there. And then the forecast is also very, very strong. So of course, we went in on the market potential. Everybody know where drones are going, and we are the pioneers and all that, So that was the basis of valuation. And there's also a benchmark out there in terms of fundraising in terms of drone. And if I were to use that benchmark, it's crazy. We will be a $4 billion company today. There are American companies that has already been listed, and their price to sales ratio are amazing. It's like crazy, unthinkable. But of course, we don't go into that basis. We look at fundamental. Our focus has always been, hey, our multiplier has to be based on actual value delivery that we are doing. Look at actual real metrics, you see. So we have not given out so much. Again, our fundraising has always been with strategic partners. Today our investors are from Japan, from Korea, from India, Malaysia. We have a lot of institutional investors in Malaysia as well. So these investors actually do bring a lot of value for Aerodyne. Case in point, our Series B Plus, which we just closed a couple of months ago, they are some of the key agriculture investors from Japan as well. So we always look for investors that add value to what we are doing. So it's actually more of strategic collaborations rather than money. Except the early stage, it was really to help us to fundraise, to grow into the other region. But now it's all about focusing on technology. So it's actually connecting all the dots together with all the resources that we need.
Okay, so there seems to be some level of maturity in both businesses. But Eric, just with Carsome, right? What part of the journey do you think you are now, right? And basically the money that he just raised in your latest round, where does it take you to next? And what are they? I think more importantly, what are the expectations?
Yeah. So I think on the business and the market perspective, we are at an inflection point. We're seeing the business now going to accelerate a lot faster. I think that's partly thanks to the awareness and the customers, testimonials that we've been generating, that's driving the organic growth. But on the other hand, also the scale of the business now with the coverage, we're covering about 10% of the population across the 3 countries that we are in. So and that's going to continue to grow, right? So we see the penetration for the platform is going up very quickly. And with the pandemic, it also helped drive the acceleration, of people going digital. Like now, even my mom and dad are like buying more stuff than me online, getting food delivery and stuff like that. So I think that behavior is going to be here to stay. We all know that. And when you think about buying an actual car online, right? That's going to happen at the same time with our platform, which is what we are pushing for. And to do that, there's a lot about the trust, a lot about the you as a consumer, you are put in control, right? That you know exactly what you're buying, you know it's the right price, you get a consistent experience, and you can talk about it, you can enjoy it. So I think we know the market is ready for our kind of business. We are trying to really bring out the key value propositions, right? And how do we bring this offering to the table, right? It's the 1-year warranty of all cars. All cars are reconditioned. You have a very nice 360 virtual showroom on our platform that you can browse all the cars just like right in front of you. We get it delivered to your doorstep as well. So it's like buying things on e-commerce. And I think one of the things about this is also we are trying to bring in a lot more technology to streamline so that you would be getting the peace of mind from our platform. So and that would mean that we have to bring in the data strategy, right? Because within Carsome, there's a lot of data that we own from the understanding of market prices of each and every car because we transact it, to the car condition of which car are more prone to this error and whatnot, and what's the repair cost of that. So all of this combined, we are trying to bring and reflect onto the front end platform so that you as a consumer are able to experience it. And I think this is putting you in control, right? And then generating that trust, giving you that peace of mind, and all these are done through technology, and all this is done through the infrastructure that we have. So I think that's where the business is right now. That we are currently this year going to hit $1 billion revenue, and that is a 60 billion market, right? So we think that when there's no sizable player within the region, and we are with that revenue we're generating right now, we are clear number one. We can get to 5%, 10%, which is easily 3 billion, 6 billion in a year, right? So and how quickly we get there. So I think that's the question, and that's where we are trying to head to right now in terms of expanding.
So I couldn't help but notice you said $1 billion in revenue. Is that dollars or ringgit? And I think perhaps yeah, okay. So perhaps more importantly, it's about the expectations of investors, because I think you've been through at least 3 rounds, if not maybe 4, Series C to D already, right, Eric?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of speculation about the public markets for you guys. I think the New York Stock Exchange dearly would love to have some ASEAN listings on their platform. I know Grab is in the mix somewhere. I know Catcha has already listed their SPAC in America. So there's an appetite, and the IPO market is very, very vibrant at this point in time. Is it something that you are actively considering, dynamically considering, because the valuations are really there and the elements are all there?
Yeah, so I think internally we've been always trying to get ourselves ready, right? Ever since the last round when we have Asia partner as our investors who came in to invest into Carsome, and they are co-founders of the fund. They are previously also involved in putting C as one of the first Southeast Asia company to this, and very, very successful. So I think in many ways we've been preparing ourselves. We've been looking at this as one of the viable path for us to eventually list in one of the major exchanges. I don't think we have a very clear answer in terms of when exactly we are doing that and where. But I think it could be something very soon, right? Like in the next 12 months or so. And I think my job is to really get the company ready, right? Not just on the perspective of like how the revenue is generated, where's the growth right now, where we are, but rather also on the corporate governance, on the ESG, everything else that make you a proper business, an exec business. And we're kind of transiting into that phase, right, to make that company become really great. And it's not about just getting listed. It's about, the next few earning calls. How do you actually perform? Whether you consistently, become and delivering above guidance, right, or meet the guidance. So I think that's how we're thinking about, if we're going public, are we ready for all of those things? And I think the answer for us internally, in most cases, we are quite ready. And I think that's how we are thinking about the next couple of quarters and months.
Yeah, definitely a different game. And of course, I also want to cite Sea Limited. Sea Limited, of course, owns, I think, Shopee, e-commerce, and I mean, they've gone through the roof, right, in terms of the post-IPO process. But what about you, Kamarul? Where in the journey are you, right? And obviously, there's expectations placed on you by investors. Where are you in the journey, and what is next, significantly?
Right. Well, this pandemic has been, strange, exciting situation as well, right? I mean, in the first place, there's an impact as well to us. We were not able to execute a lot of projects that we already have in hand. There's also some downright cancellations as well because of the situation, especially those in the hospitality, for example. So COVID really sort of set us back, I would say already 18 months right now. But at the same time, there were other growth that came out of this pandemic as well. So for example, I mentioned about agriculture. So there was I wouldn't say a pivot, there was additional value generator, engine of growth in the organization that came out of this as well. So where we are right now, again, we are at this inflection point now as well. Because if in the past, our focus was really only on B2B, we are going into B2C as well right now. We've already rolled this out on our agriculture solutions. Globally also, we are still already seeing the industry restarting the operations. So I think 2022, early 2022 will be a great time. So we are seeing that growth is going to be really, really exciting for us in many regions. Our Latin America is actually growing very fast, America too, as well right now. And we are already in some of the key market, future key market. We are already in India and Indonesia. Both of these two markets, for example, India and Indonesia will be one of our biggest revenue contributor in the future. Unfortunately, both of these are really deeply affected by COVID-19. Indonesia is the epicenter of COVID in our region right now, for example. So we had a pause in these two markets, for example, the past 2 years, the past 18 months, really. So we are looking at the revival of these two regions. So we are looking at consolidating all of this again by 2022. And we are gearing up for that right now. So the next round will be a Series C round, really to help bring our agriculture solutions and also the swarm intelligence platform. I mentioned about our next generation technology. And then we are at that stage. So to us, our IPO is probably in the timeline of 2023. Again, we are not really in a rush for IPO. Of course, for our investors, the timeline that we promise is actually 2024. So there's plenty of time for us to do that. So our focus really right now is just to keep growing, keep developing the market. We are playing the role as the catalyst for the adoption of drone technology as well. And fortunately, we are already seeing signs now. A lot of our clients, Fortune 500 companies type of organization around the world, are now seeing the benefit of working with a company like this. In the past, some of these big corporations built their own drone program internally. And now they realize it does not make sense, for many reasons. So now we're already doing, since last year, some trial work with these organizations, and the adoption rate has been doubling, tripling for some of these large corporations. So that's actually our target right now.
Yeah, so I want to dive into with both of you this whole COVID thing, right? And obviously not wanting to be too trivializing about it. It's been huge, right? And it's been a boon for many companies. It's been a bane for others. It sounds like, Kamarul, you hit back a little bit, and I presume that's on the balance sheet side because whether it's a government or an MNC or a GLC, they might not be able to afford, obviously the fees because their P&Ls have been hurt badly. To what extent did you have to pivot and try and change the business plan? And I think also more importantly, with MDEC and organizations like MDEC, who do offer assistance and guidance and strategy, how much of a role do they play? Maybe start with maybe just go with Kamarul first.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, and I said the same thing yesterday as well on another program. Like Einstein said, with every crisis, there's always an opportunity. So our opportunity here is actually it got us thinking about other things that we should be doing using drones. Right? In the past, we were focusing on infrastructure, we were focusing on our project management system and all that, and those are growing very nicely as well. Anyway, but because of COVID-19 last year, at the beginning, we found ourselves in a situation where we have about 50, 60 people with nothing much to do. And these are our valuable team, there has not been any layoff. So what we did was immediately put them into developing these new solutions, these new ideas that we had, right? And immediately both has significantly progressed to where we are today. Our agriculture solutions is now working at more than 500 million, 500,000 hectares around the world. So it's been growing by leaps and bounds. We just placed an order of 1,000 drones at the cost of about 50 million ringgit just for the drone itself, kind of thing, So the growth has been tremendous. So to me, in terms of agriculture, we started in Malaysia. We are going to Thailand, Indonesia, and India as well after this. I think on the growth potential for our Agrimo, we call Agrimo, this is agriculture solution itself can be a company by itself. It can be a unicorn by itself as well for our agriculture solution, for example, right? So that's it's not a pivot, but it's additional engine of growth. So our traditional solutions are now restarting again since a couple of months ago. So I think it's an interesting situation.
And to what extent was MDEC in the picture?
Yeah, MDEC has been very, very helpful. We have been involved with MDEC since 2017. They were the first that brought us to Middle East. They helped us connect with some organization in Japan too. They helped us a lot with visibility. We were operating under the radar in the beginning, so it was through MDEC's belief in us. A lot of visibility happens, and out of that attracts the right kind of attention. We have some investors came in through MDEC's introductions as well. They really do help a lot with visibility for Aerodyne.
And Eric, I just want to get your view, because I think to some extent Tesla has been quite a trailblazer for online automotive e-commerce. You can buy a Tesla online. You can specify exactly what color and what shape and what music it plays from its door sills. I think Rivian and all the other guys are also going that same route. How did COVID alter your business plan, if at all? And I think also quite importantly from a national perspective, did MDEC play a role in how you strategize this quite difficult time?
Yeah, sure. So I think if you dial back, like this pandemic kind of happened since last year, March, and it's still happening as it is. I think things are getting better soon, hopefully. But at the same time, it wasn't an easy time, right? I think for all of us. And I think we all recognize that during this whole pandemic period, there's multiple lockdown. I think as a business, we've been seeing like exactly what Kamarul said, right? It's a crisis, right? You cannot deny it. And it's actually very damaging to the economy, to many sectors. But yet, there's always a way for you to find opportunities out of that. And that's exactly the first email that I shot out, right, to the wider group of employees, because we have Malaysia, we have Indonesia, we have Thailand, we even have a hub in China. So, and our team in Singapore as well. So everyone is facing the same issues, right? So, and I think we planned in the context of, we know that with COVID, what's going to happen? What's the trend like? And we predicted that digitalization is going to be adopted a lot faster. That included with cars purchase as well, and car selling. So, and I think we basically map out our planning, our strategies to design towards coming out very quickly the moment when things are normalized. That is, like last year after the May lockdown. I think by somewhere mid-May to June, we started to recover very quickly. In July, we have a record high, and August continue all the way to end of the year. And early this year also, we have reached another few more record high, right? To, seeing us right now performing a few months ahead of projection. So there are hiccups here and there in terms of how COVID situation is, but I think the way we approach it is we know that net is a positive. And I think ultimately, we have received the help from many other parties, right? Our investors has been helpful, MDEC has been helpful, and we always are being informed in a way to understand like what would be the next thing that's going to happen. And I think that having that well-informed that information to create a well-informed decision making is very important, and we'll be on the benefiting end, right, when it comes to that. When Tesla, and then one more thing about Tesla, we're gonna be selling Tesla this month. August, very soon. You're gonna see it happening on the platform of Carsome. So it's kind of how we think about, we are the future. Tesla is the future. This is the future meets the future, and we will continue to bring more innovations into the game, right? And ultimately, is something that we will embrace, and we be on a disruption front. So we will always stay very disruptive in the way we think about building the business.
And of course, you guys are car dealers, so why not Tesla, right? Because you can. At this point in time, I'm going to bring in the two original heavyweights of the startup world, Tony Fernandes, Tan Sri to me and everybody else in the world, and Patrick Grove. Now, can we have the two erstwhile gentlemen into the room, please? And while that is happening, I just want to introduce both of them. Tan Sri Tony Fernandes, Chief Executive Officer, AirAsia. He really needs no introduction. He and his partners have built the world's most famous low-cost carrier. There's also a bunch of other businesses and hotels, motor racing, insurance. He's not stopped building. We're speaking with him today as he's in the midst of rebuilding the business, this time into the digital realm, focused on fintech, e-commerce deliveries. And of course, Patrick Grove of Catcha Group, iProperty, iCar, Common Ground, ArtRev, Frontier, the list goes on and on. He's a man who also needs no introduction. He's a self-confessed serial entrepreneur. He can also be described as an IPO specialist. He's listed 6 PLCs in 3 countries already, I think Australia, Malaysia, New York. His latest venture, not coincidentally, also features Eric, and we'll be getting into that in a few minutes. Let's start with Tony. Tony, how are you? Good morning, sir. You're looking very dapper in your green. That's right. Let's get into the whole journey with you and where you are in that whole transmogrification from airlines into the digital realm.
We started this journey maybe about 2 years before COVID. First, when I met Travis of Uber and suddenly realized what they were worth, and actually our data was much richer than Uber, we decided to go down this route. And the first kind of exercise was to really get our data in order. And then we plowed on with building 3 digital businesses. Really, COVID has helped us in some way because we couldn't do anything else. We couldn't fly, so we kind of were on the ground, so to speak, building these companies which have ended up as the Teleport, our logistics company, BigPay, our fintech, and our super app.
Yeah, so that must be quite a challenging time for you because one is in neutral maybe, and the other one is growing as fast. How are you traversing that particular journey?
Well, we kind of, AirAsia Group is almost like a holding company now. We've created 2 groups: the aviation group, which includes the airlines, an engineering company, and our restaurant group. And then we've got these 3 digital companies. So we're trying to raise capital independently. Hasn't been easy, but sometimes when you're not blessed with someone like Patrick Grove and have lots of money, then we build it the hard way, right? So Eric has his mentor and benefactor, and Patrick and others. We got to do it the hard way. As you've known me for 20 years, and you know that we've always had to do it the hard way. But that makes us kind of tough. That makes us kind of a new kind of tech company. A low-cost tech company. It's kind of unheard of, right? That drives for efficiency, that drives for cash flow, yet is able to grow. So we're not blessed with capital, but we're blessed with energy, a good brand, data, and great people.
Yeah, of course. When you said 20 years, Tony, I had a flashback to your little room by the side of the runway, and you were playing Lenny Kravitz on your hi-fi system. But Patrick, at your vintage of just mid-40s, you have become a bit of a mentor, a maven, a grandfather, the OG of the startup world.
Mid-40s.
You've lifted.
So receding hairline as well, man.
Yeah, that's been receding since I was born. So
don't make that up, Patrick. It's receding. Be brave.
Cerebral activity. 6 PLCs, obviously, this is a very interesting time for you. You've listed your SPAC, the blank check company in New York, and you're looking for an asset. I'm not going to give away any too many secrets, but where are you in the whole startup journey? And of course, we'll get into your whole mentorship journey in just a little while as well. But where are you in terms of that particular development?
yeah, look, I mean, it's still early days. I mean, if you're familiar with the SPAC process, you know, we raised 300 million US. We have 2 years to find a company to partner with. I think we're only in month 3 or 4, right? So we still have a long way to go. But look, we're looking for a great Southeast Asian consumer internet company backed by a great team, a great entrepreneur, and look, we're hoping to announce something by the end of this year. But you know, as of today, there's nothing concrete, there's nothing set in stone. But look, we're pretty excited to showcase Southeast Asia to the global investing markets, which I think people have not done enough of.
And of course, on the back of success stories like C Limited, which has done really, really well. In your just description of what you're looking for to fill the blank check with, it sounds like you've just described Carsome.
It could be Carsome, it could be anyone on this call, it could be a lot of companies, right? So I think one of the beautiful things about Southeast Asia is that there's so many great companies out there. And I think one thing that people ignore, you know, Southeast Asia, we have 700 million internet users now. Like this is bigger than America. This is bigger than Europe. This is bigger than America and Europe added together. So when you talk about our total addressable market, and you talk about the fact that, you know, that we've been in COVID and lockdown for the last 18 months, there are so many great internet companies out there that, you know, so I don't think there will be one Southeast Asian internet company going public in the US. I think there will be dozens. And right, you're already seeing probably Guru announced literally, I think 48 hours ago that they're doing a listing in the US. So I think there is more to come.
Well, obviously, you've just listed your SPAC in New York, Patrick. So you have a front seat view of what investors are looking for, what kind of metrics they are, you know, most are salivating over. You know, what kind of perspective can you give on that front? What are investors looking for in ASEAN?
Yeah, so I'll tell you something interesting. So 2 things are important. One is investors are looking for regions with growth faster than their incumbent region. So if you're in America, you're looking for emerging markets to grow faster than your core market, right? And so that's why you invest outside of America. And so what you're finding is that the great American internet companies, you know, they're growing at anywhere from 30 to 60% year on year. You'll see Amazon, Facebook, Google, Uber, and so on, you know, they're growing at 30 to 60% a year. When you look at some of these great Asian companies, particularly China and Southeast Asia, you know, you're seeing companies growing at 100% year on year. So when you have this great trajectory and momentum of growth, number one, that's what companies are looking for. Number two, it's almost as if Southeast Asia has been given like a free kick in the last week, because what you're finding is that the Chinese regulatory meltdown, and, you know, you're seeing all the great Chinese internet companies, like whether it's Tencent, Alibaba, you know, are down 20, 30% in the last 2 weeks because of the uncertainty in the Chinese regulatory market. You're seeing all these fund managers that have capital, they need to deploy it. They need to deploy it in emerging markets in tech. And for whatever reason, they just can't deploy that in China. So what you're seeing is that all these huge buckets of capital are now looking at Southeast Asia and saying, like, who's next, who's out there? So I think we've got this wave that we need to ride for the next 3-6 months, where there'll be an abundance of capital looking for great Southeast Asian opportunities.
Yeah, Tony, let's come back to you in right now, because obviously you've got these huge ambitions for your digital alarm. You've talked about how data rich you are, and you've been talking about this. You've been banging this drum for a number of years, but you know, it's to be as honest as you can and to be as candid as you can. To what extent are your ambitions on the digital front, you know, being constrained, could be too strong a word, in terms of what's happening with the airline business? How inextricably linked are those two areas?
Well, I mean, they are linked. We can't run away from that. But they are also decoupled in that we're raising capital independently, and the digital business has this huge asset of AirAsia as a brand, which is known throughout ASEAN in a very deep way, coupled with the huge amount of data. So while it would be great, and imagine once the airline starts going, we then get a whole lot of new data, a whole lot of new transactions. So if you think of Grab or Uber, when they get all their cars on the road as well, that drives more usage of their app as well. So we're doing okay. We're getting 20 million visitors a month, unique visitors on our app without the airline. Capital's being raised independently. And when the airline comes back, which just is a matter of time, that's going to be a massive boost, because in this COVID period, we've built all our infrastructure already. And now we just need a little bit of liquidity. And we're very confident we're going to catch up. Now, as I said, when you interviewed me the first time in my office, listening to Lenny Kravitz, and you impressed me because you knew who Lenny Kravitz were, and a few reporters that knew music. I'm not sure Eric knows who Lenny Kravitz is, but you asked me the same question: will you be around, in a year's time or something? And I remember saying we'll come back in a year's time. Who knows? No one gave us a chance. Everyone likes to write off AirAsia, so we're going to be a player. Mark my words. We've got fantastic assets, and we'll catch up with the rest. In the same way, this little airline with 2 planes became the largest airline in ASEAN. So, don't write us off. I may not look as young as Eric or as sexy as Eric, but I certainly look as good as Patrick. So don't write us off just yet.
So can I add in there? I'll tell you something fascinating, right? And I think most people don't realize that we did a survey about 10 years ago when we launched a daily deal site. We did a survey to most people, and we said, what has been your first online experience in Southeast Asia? And the number one kind of the virgin experience online for most people was AirAsia.com. And you think about AirAsia.com, right? It's been around now, almost 20 years now. And a lot of people, their first thing that they ever bought online was a ticket on AirAsia. And I think there was a long year before Shopee, before Amazon, before Lazada and all that. AirAsia.com was the largest e-commerce site in Southeast Asia by a huge stretch. So, and back to Tony's point about the data, he's been collecting digital data for almost 20 years. And he literally was that on-ramp to the online world. And I kid you not, we were surveying aunties and uncles and be like, what do you know about online? Oh, I don't know about online. Have you ever bought a ticket on AirAsia.com? Yes, I have. We're like, well, that's online. And so I think we've got to give a kind of a huge thanks to Tony, because there are millions and millions of people in Southeast Asia, not just Malaysia, all over Southeast Asia, where their first digital experience was buying a ticket on Tony's website.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. I mean, actually, if you go to my interviews, I've said in as pleasant a way as possible that while many of these tech companies were in their nappies, we actually were building a tech company. AirAsia was the first company to sell tickets online. We were the first company to handle online payment, which at that time was very tough because not many people had credit cards. So we built this, which people are unaware of, this massive payment infrastructure, that is so deep. And that's why we went into fintech, because the ability to transact with anyone in Southeast Asia, no one has the depth we have in terms of the multitude of payment methods. So all of that 20 years, and our consumer is slightly of higher value. Someone wrote recently in the Ken that AirAsia has the top 10% of customers in terms of disposable income, because when you're buying an airline ticket, you're spending a little bit more than if you're buying a ride or you're buying food. And so the personalization level of our data is really huge, coupled with our rewards program, and coupled with the fact that we've been dealing with our customers, good or bad, for a long, long time.
Yeah, gentlemen, I want to raise something that basically triangulates what Patrick and Tony have both experienced in their corporate past. Tony, when you started AirAsia, you had the longest and hardest battle with Malaysia Airports, right, and Malaysia Airlines, them not being too happy with your presence. And Patrick, you talked, I think, in the past about how entrepreneurs spring up in jurisdictions where their governments may not necessarily do as much for them as they should like. Therefore, there's lots of opportunities. At the same time, there's also a Malaysia discount because there's only 33 million people here. So for the benefit of startups, right, who do want to have regional global businesses, much like Kamarul and Eric and Tony and yourself, Patrick, That country discount that Malaysian startups suffer from. What kind of advice can you give to them to somehow make this journey from local startup businesses that address local issues to something that is much more global in nature? Maybe let's start with Patrick as the IPO specialist here.
Yeah, so I would say, like we've been really, really fortunate. We've never suffered from the Malaysian discount. And I think one of the things, and I mean, it's the same on everyone on this panel, right? Whether it's Kamarul, Eric, or Tony, is that, Malaysians are really, and back to your point, because Malaysia has a small domestic market compared to Indonesia, compared to Thailand, what you'll find is that I think the higher caliber and the more ambitious Malaysian entrepreneurs, they go regional from day one, right? So you look at Carsome is a regional company. It's not a Malaysian company. AirAsia is a regional company. Like every time I go to Bali, I see AirAsia umbrellas on the beach. Like I feel so proud as someone who's from Malaysia to see that, right? And so I think one of the things that we've been blessed is because we have a small market, we've been conditioned from day one to think that if you want to build a great business, you have to go regional. Whereas you look at some of the other entrepreneurs, say in Indonesia and the Philippines, because they're blessed with such a big domestic market, they don't think about going regional. They just think about staying local. And as a result, they build great local businesses, but more often than not, they don't succeed when they try to build regional businesses. Grab's another example. Grab started as a Malaysian company. It's now a regional company, right? So I think Malaysia is a great hotbed of actually building a great regional company. So I would say, look, as long as you build a regional company, you will never suffer from a Malaysian discount.
Yeah, and Patrick, you did talk about how you eventually listed iProperty in Australia. I think because you just couldn't find investors who understood or could countenance what you were proposing in Malaysia. I want to bring up a very, very relevant point here, because you talk about Grab, right? Malaysia is fantastic as a hotbed for startups because there's so many inefficiencies here, but eventually they tend to lose them. They tend to lose them to frame jurisdictions like Singapore or New York or Australia, who do a much better job of grooming startups for the big picture. To get constructive about today, right? How do we address that?
Well, can I jump in there? Because
yeah,
we've been a Malaysian company for 20 years. We didn't leave. We listed in Malaysia. We've had to deal with analysts who are tougher in some ways than foreign analysts. But we're Malaysian. Malaysia gave us a chance. So we've stuck here. I was asked a question by the Financial Times, will you move to Singapore? And I said, no. Why? We have great talent here. I built an airline that's globally recognized. We built an airline, not I built an airline. And by Malaysians, 20 years, we won the world's best airline 11 times in a row. Why do I need to move to Singapore? We were offered to move AirAsia's headquarters to Dubai at one stage. So, I'm very firm that AirAsia does not need to move to Singapore. Does not need we may need to use the capital markets and of other countries. But certainly our head office will always be here because the talent is here. The infrastructure has been built, MDEC being one of them. And we're as good as anybody. So I can confidently say, we will be here and we will build our company in Malaysia and be an ASEAN company in the same way we built AirAsia. It's down to the people, right? People always have this thing, we have to go somewhere else. I mean, look at Eric, what he's built. He's a Malaysian company. Grab actually started in Malaysia. So we have talent. It's up to the company to want to stay here and build it. And there are a lot of great companies, and with entrepreneurs such as Patrick helping young companies, which hopefully will include us as well.
Tony, well, obviously, thankfully you didn't go to Dubai and you didn't go to Jakarta or Singapore. You stayed here, and to some extent, KL from a location perspective in ASEAN is smack bang center in this universe. So it does make sense for you to stay here as an airline, right? But it's a technology company which has no boundaries, no barriers. The proposition to go abroad is easier. So Eric, I want to ask you now, because you have every risk of being the next Grab to go to Singapore. What should Malaysia do to make you stay here? And I'm going to ask Kamarul this as well because he's smiling, and so we must ask him.
Sure. Yeah. So I think it's I resonate very well with what Tony mentioned, right? Is when you're building a company, it's really about the people in they work with on a day-to-day, right? And we have seen, really great talent coming out from Malaysia. And in fact, a lot of people that we know that outside of Malaysia doing very well, they are mostly Malaysian as well. And I think it's kind of validates, right, the point where, us being Malaysian, we are able to actually operate not just a regional business, but a global business. I think Kamarul business is kind of global already, having so many branches in different places outside of Southeast Asia. And I think that is our belief in terms of how we think about where our offices should be at, where should we be based at. We want to be based at people that we work with together, people who are able to deliver and execute. And I think we find that in many ways, right? When we look at our Malaysia offices, we have great talents over here, and we've been able to continue build a team to be a lot bigger. So I think that's something that we think about in terms of how we place ourselves in the context of where our office would be. We have a lot of great talents over here, and we want to be here at the same time to help these people to grow as a individual as well.
Gentlemen, the mutual admiration in this room is something to be admired. You all love each other, and it's fantastic to see. But just to get very constructive here, what should Malaysia do to make people like you stay here? Should they relook at the tax framework for digital companies? Should they make it easier for you to list in terms of maybe dual class structure, shares, for example? And Kamarul, let me get your point of view on this, right? Because I'm sure you have been courted by all the big players around all the big jurisdictions, whether it's Dubai or whether it's Singapore, whether it's Jakarta or whatever, right? What should Malaysia do?
Well, I do feel that at the moment efforts are already being done. To be honest, what we need to do is first of all support local company. Right, just take the Korean, for example. Why do Koreans become these tech and heavy industry powerhouse? Because the Koreans believe in the local company. So they give them chances. And in Malaysia, we used to have this situation, right? The preference has always been for foreign companies, especially for technology side. Even China, why do we have Baidu, Tencent and all that? Because the Chinese give preference to the local company. And we need to be doing the same thing here in Malaysia as well. Even if we do not have the tech, bring in foreign companies and partner with the locals so that there can be some technology transfer as well. So that's one. I think number two is funding. And I've been talking about this constantly with the stakeholders here in Malaysia as well. We need to make it easy. Some of the funding mechanism here is just, to be honest, is preposterous. The kind of terms, the kind of... let's not go into detail, right? I mean, there's some countries where sometimes you just have to, spray and pray, and you need to do that at early stage. I mean, there is less of that here, so we need to, take that leap of faith. And then, I think the government is beginning to believe this as well. I mean, you want to, when you talk about innovation, you need all three parties together. You need the industry, you need people like us, you need the academia because they provide the talent. Then you need to provide the government because government provide the framework. Government provide even the contracts to begin with, right? So you need to make it friendlier. We need to make it easy for startup to grow. And I think it is happening, to be honest. I see a lot of work being done from the academia side. They're already talking now about developing talent of the future. What kind of talent do we need in the future? Both Tony and Patrick and even Ari was talking about, we have the talent here. That's absolutely right. But we do have something that we don't have, to be honest. And that's actually a bane of our expansion as well, which is actually deep tech talents. When you are competing globally, especially in deep tech, you would require talents that are world-class. Unfortunately, we have limited access to that globally. I'm here in Malaysia. That is why at Aerodyne, we are now actually, even though the core development is in Malaysia, we are bringing talent from outside to come here. We have our development team in India. We have our development team in Indonesia, and soon we'll have some in Vietnam as well, and in Japan, for example, right? So we can't, unfortunately, rely only on Malaysian at the moment. So this is something that we can do as well, right? If we start preparing for this in Malaysia, who knows, in the future, we can have this kind of talents in country as well.
That phrase, preposterous funding expectations, should be a headline in all the newspapers all around the world. But you know that those three elements that you talked about, Kamarul, the confluence of academia, government, and entrepreneurs, that is the formula that has worked in Silicon Valley. And Malaysia, to some extent, has been lacking at least one strong drive in one of those departments. I'll let you, all of you, figure out which one it is. Patrick, I couldn't help but notice you're laughing when Kamarul said, used the word preposterous. You know, you've been through the grind 6 times already, and you know, you would have, I guess, the best perspective in terms of you know, what it takes to build a successful business. You know, how can Malaysia address this? I mean, every single year we go through the same rigmarole of the same omissions, right? How can it be different this time around?
Yeah, you're raising a really good question, right? Because I mean, I come from a different lens, and I've said before that, you know, great entrepreneurs shouldn't rely on government, right? Like, we don't need government help. We don't need government support. We just want to do what we want to do, right? We just want to serve the customer. And if anything, we just want the government to get out of the way, right? Whether it's regulation, whether it's rules, whether like so if anything, right, we just want to do what we do. No great entrepreneur should ever be reliant on the government to give funding, the government to give I don't know, support for this or support for like just get out of the way and make it easy. But unfortunately, you know, we live in Southeast Asia. We live in part of the world where the governments don't make it easy. And this is not, I'm not talking about Malaysia, I'm just talking about governments in general, right? And you're right, the point does come up everywhere. So I mean, what would be the dream scenario? The dream scenario would be, number one, Malaysia has a very supportive capital market in funding startups, right? Today, it just does not, right? I'll give you an example, right? Bukalapak and GoTo have announced plans to list on the Jakarta Stock Exchange. These are huge multi-billion-dollar companies, but they're loss-making. I do not think these companies would be, if there was a Malaysian equivalent to Bukalapak or GoTo, they would not be able to list on the Malaysian Stock Exchange, right? So number one, right? I mean, Bursa Malaysia, right, is still not as supportive as it can be. Look, it's still got a long way to go, and there's great people there. But if you look at what the JSX has done in the last few months, right, they've just said, you know what, we're going to open the door to the tech companies. We want great tech companies to be listed in Indonesia as opposed to go to the US, right? And so number one, that's that. Number two, make it easier to get people into the country, right? I mean, COVID is a unique situation, but right now, I mean, Kamarul said that, like, there's been times where we wanted to bring 200 engineers into Malaysia. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it isn't. Like sometimes the rules are clear, sometimes the rules are not, right? Like, just make it really clear all the time.
Tony, I want to get your perspective, because you've you've been on both sides of the divide. You've done the, in your personal capacity, building the business. You've also seen the corridors of power, and you're quite close to some of them, right? What is your gauge of how ready or how not ready the government is? I know certain individuals are, I know some are not. What are the biggest impediments to that, reformation that Patrick and Kamarul and Eric so need?
I don't know if I'm the right guy, but basically, I think everything that the guys have said resonate with me as well. I think consistency of policy, and I think support in terms of the labor force, I think is desperately needed. But consistency, I think, is very key. Capital is, that's just going to take time. And, I echo Kamarul's views completely. And there is a massive discount when you're seen as a Malaysian company. And that, I think, is why many companies leave Malaysia, because they, if you suddenly a Singaporean company, you're taken more seriously. Right now, the flavor is Indonesia. But for a variety of reasons, I still think Malaysia is the right place. Workforce, diversity of workforce, in terms of we have so many different languages here, etc. Cost, Malaysia is still the lowest cost base by a long way. 3 is, we're bringing in talent, and Malaysia is a great place to live. People forget that. It's a great place to live. Indians coming here, Indonesians coming here, Vietnamese. If you go to AirAsia right now, you'll see all kinds of culture. So I think the government has an amazing opportunity now. AirAsia was born out of 9/11. This is a chance to take the messages from Patrick and Kamarul and Eric, myself and others, to re-look at this whole digital framework. What can they do to help it? It's not just about capital. What can they do to ease work permit regulations? What can they do to ease consistency of policy so that we can grow rapidly? What can they do to, facilitate fintech companies? Now, on the positive side, many ASEAN companies haven't come up with e-banking licenses. Bank Negara has, and 29 companies have applied for a license. I mean, this is second to Singapore. So the move is there, and conferences like this and MDEC and all these other dudes can help us in that message. But, we have this National Recovery Council. It's a good opportunity to re-look at it and say, where are Malaysia's strengths and weaknesses? I firmly believe we have a great opportunity in tech. And what can be done to help tech companies going forward? I mean, Kamarul's company is unbelievable, actually. It's a world beater, and that's homegrown 100%. And I think there are many more. There are lots of games. I am the best FIFA player on this call, and but there are a lot of huge amount of game developers that have been under the radar, that have been doing a great job. Our animation industry is really one of the best in the world. So, behind the scenes, Malaysia's got lots. We need to bring that to the front. And I think one of the great things that the UK government did, the Korean government has done, and the Korean government was heavily involved in K-pop, by the way, heavily involved. Now, one of the K-pop, as I've always said, by the way, is started in Thailand. Thailand was the first place for K-pop. And then the Japanese copied the Thais. And then the Koreans took the Japanese and made it K-pop. It was J-pop, if you remember correctly. Then it became K-pop. And the Koreans took Thais, right? Blackpink has a Thai girl, which people kind of forget. So what the Korean government did very well was market, right? And now that's up to MIDA and people. They marketed. If you go back, I think the best thing the government can do, can market Aerodyne, can market Carsome, can market AirAsia to say these are homegrown tech companies. If you think about the airline industry, Emirates didn't get a lot of money from the Dubai government, but boy, they got a lot of marketing. Emirates sponsored Arsenal, sponsored every single event, and it's branding. So my message to the government is celebrate Malaysian success stories. Talk about Malaysia, make Carsome and Kamarul as big as Jack Ma, or well, probably that's the wrong word, but as big as some of these huge tech companies around. That's what I'm really looking for. And I think that's, we need to brand our entrepreneurs. We need to brand Malaysia as a tech center. When we have companies like Aerodyne and people don't know it's a Malaysian company, that's a waste, right? And so many reasons, the Aerodynes and the Carsomes will make Malaysia a place of interest for capital to come in. We don't need the government to give us capital. We need the government to shout about our successes, and then the positive spin-off of people coming in, capital coming in, more entrepreneurs coming in. And you would not believe how many great little companies there are all over Malaysia that are hidden. As I said, game developers to animation companies to, I didn't know Carsome was a Malaysian company. I really didn't until he took one of my staff. And I really was like kind of pissed off with him. Who is this asshole? So now we've become great friends, and we're hopefully going to do something together. And he's trying to sell me a Tesla and rip me off in the same process. But, I did not know that Carsome was a Malaysian company. And now I'm going around the world saying, I've never had the chance of meeting Kamarul. We haven't spoken on the phone. But, I go around the world saying, hey, when you talk about Indonesia, we talk about Singapore, we've got world beaters in Malaysia. Our drone technology is far ahead of anyone else. And so that's my message to the government. I mean, 1,000 things to do. I think Patrick's message is good, consistency of policy and building a policy. And then finally, I think brand Malaysia as a tech hub, sing the successes of the Malaysian companies, and don't let it forget, Grab started as a Malaysian company. It might not be a Malaysian company anymore, but it started in Malaysia.
Yeah.
We should celebrate that success.
You know, and to echo Tony's point, you know, I've been so fortunate. I've met entrepreneurs from every country in Southeast Asia, and it's the Malaysian entrepreneurs, without a doubt, they just stand out every single time, just in terms of ambition, hustle, creativeness. And so, and, you know, there really is something here. And so, you know, where we've got great entrepreneurs on this call, there's another 2,000 great entrepreneurs in Malaysia that people haven't heard about. And it's so true, because I do meet so many great entrepreneurs, and more of them are Malaysian, more so than the Indonesians I meet, more so than the Thais that I meet, more so than the Filipinos. There's something about Malaysia, there's some secret sauce that just creates people who rise to the occasion every time. And
Patrick, if you really dig into Singapore entrepreneurs, they're all Malaysian. Right. The best Singaporean entrepreneurs, all born in Penang or Kuala Lumpur or JB.
Yeah.
Go do your homework. I've known that.
Exactly.
And secondly, just on that marketing thing, you know, look at the UK. They're going to one specific industry, fintech. They've been pushing that fintech industry, you know, from Revolut to Monzo, and saying best of fintech is in Britain, right? And they've kind of got the leadership away from America in that. So my message to MDEC and the government is, let's start singing our praises. Let's start talking more about Aerodyne and Carsome. Let's show the world that Malaysia has great talent. Dig out those gems that we have, and let's start singing about it. And you'll see a positive, vicious cycle, right? That will just grow and grow and grow, and then capital will come into this country. And the second thing is, as you said, but you didn't give me a chance to answer, but you said Malaysia is a great place to build an ASEAN business. We have every sort of language spoken here. We can deal with all kinds of cultures, right, in ASEAN. And as Patrick has said, it's a 700 million market that you've got. Malaysia should be the hub for tech. But until you talk about successes, no one's going to come here.
Well, that's the thing. Malaysia finds itself in probably the worst political crisis in its history, right? Constitutionally as well, and from a democratic standpoint. It's a honeymoon period that we have still Eric and Kamarul within the Malaysian fold. And it's a transition period that if we don't do the right thing, we might well lose them to Singapore or Hong Kong or whatever it is that they eventually, list in. Eric, as candidly as possible, what can the government do and the power brokers do to keep you in Malaysia so that you don't become like another Grab and have an HQ in Singapore?
Yeah, I think the rest of the gentlemen here said it all right. What I do believe ultimately is the new economy need a voice in Malaysia, right? I think we have enough company successes that we can really champion. And we look at neighboring countries, these companies are being championed in the same way with the support, right, of the nation, the government. You know, everyone recognized it. And I think it's a surprise, you know, to the point where Tony didn't even know Carsome was a Malaysian company. We've been operating here for 6 years, right? And this is a place where we grown, we prove our market, product market fit, and we expand into other countries. And to think that even other countries, the people who would recognize us as a Malaysian company, more so, but not so much in the home market. I think that's something that we need to change, right? I think that's something that we would need in terms of giving a voice, that Malaysia is a good home ground for us to create new economy that represent the futures, the next 10, 20 years of GDP growth in the country. And we have the enough like quality talents for us to do that. We have companies that also facilitate that kind of growth. And I think that would be very helpful, not just for myself, for the rest of the tech companies out there, right? We all eagerly want to do something, want to scale beyond Malaysia. And to claim the success, you know, to be a Malaysia success is always a great thing.
By the way, Malaysia's just got into the semi-finals of the Olympics in badminton. We beat the Chinese #1. So we can definitely be #1 in tech.
Absolutely, absolutely. Kamarul?
Straight sets, by the way.
Oh, I missed that.
Kamarul?
Oh,
be
yeah.
honest.
Yeah, sure. I think focus and clarity, you know, and be sincere about doing this. You you know. So there's a lot of conversation in the past as well about, you know, promoting the local companies, about basically make it easy for businesses to thrive, you know, support them, put away all of these restrictions, you know, just really focus. Even for drone operations, for example, I mean, this is a clear example. Malaysia is one of the toughest country in the world to operate. I'm not kidding you at all. You know, in Australia, I can fly without even going to any authority because I already have permissions to do it. In Malaysia, it will still take us 3 weeks before we can operate. That's a clear example. So we need to have that strong political will to make a lot of change, to make things happen. And then I think that's clarity and that strong will to change is needed in the country. And I think, though, it is already happening in a way.
Okay, well, I think
can I just add to Kamarul's point? Just, you know, look, we're trying to get into drones and air taxis, and obviously we're an airline that's not flying very much at the moment, but we're going to soon. But you know, I see a change, Kamarul, within DCA, or sorry, CAAM now. So that shows my age. And when we go there and say, you know, we want to do this and you've got to help us. And of course, the first is, you know, you must have 10 people or line on site and all kinds of things, right? A pilot has to command the drone. And I'm like, wow, that's going to be the most expensive package in the world delivered. But, you know, we in the industry have to help them change as well, right? In the same way that I think AirAsia, Big Pay drove online lending. I mean, if you ask the ministry, they will say it's AirAsia 100%. We drove it to change laws from pre-British time to so you could do online lending. So I think we have to go out there. I mean, we were new. There were much bigger lending companies, but it was AirAsia that took it to the Ministry of Housing and saying, look, we got to do that. We also sat with Bank Negara and said, you know, who I think is fantastic, by the way. And we sat with Bank Negara and said, we need cloud. If you want everything to be on premise, we can't compete with the big guys who have cloud everywhere. And so they change the rules for cloud. So I do think businesses have to be a little bit more positive, not just expect everything to change, but spend time explaining. Civil servants will take the easy option, right? Why change? We got to also spend. Now, maybe some countries, they're very proactive. But I think we have to take responsibility as well. Don't just sit back and expect it to change.
Okay, gentlemen, we've got about 7 minutes left, so let's try and get constructive even more and talk about the future, right? So Patrick, for the startups in the room, how and what kind of things should they be looking for to build a regional unicorn? At a time, you know, taken in the context of increasing regulatory oversights a la China, in the context of, you know, a 12-year-long cycle of monetary easing, but then, you know, that whole rate tightening cycle might occur. So from the context of those macro factors, right, and how this region is going, what kind of insights can you provide into what elements will become the next regional unicorn?
Yeah, like, I mean, Eric and Tony have done it, right? You've got to have boots on the ground in those countries, right? And I think if you look at kind of what AirAsia and Carsome have done, right, they've proven out their product in Malaysia, right, very, very quickly. And then once you've got that base and the unit economics and everything works, and then you quickly raise capital to take that case study to Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, Singapore, and so on and so forth, right? And the beautiful thing is, I think back to Tony's point, right, we have great talent in Malaysia. And if you look at a lot of these great Malaysian companies that go regional, they very often take their Malaysian talent and send them regional as well, right? And so, you know, if you go to Indonesia or Philippines, Thailand, then, you know, there's great Malaysian communities there that have been sent there by these Malaysian regional companies. So I think, look, number one is the formula for success, and it was the same for Grab. Prove yourself in Malaysia, do it in 6 to 12 months. And then, you know, once you got the confidence that your product is working and that customers want it, then quickly bring yourself to the other bigger Asian markets. And I think that is the path that many regional companies have done time and time again with Malaysia as a HQ.
Yeah, so just taking in your personal context, Patrick, you raised $300 million for your blank check company. What kind of business plans are you looking at? What kind of things, you know, excites you and makes you foam at the mouth?
You know, 700 million people that are on the internet, right? And if you go back 3 years ago, maybe 100 million of them were only on the internet. And of that 100 million, 50 million of them their first digital experience was AirAsia.com. But you're right. But what you've seen during COVID in the last 3 years, you've seen another 200-300 million people come on the internet for the first time. So what gets me really excited is that if you can come up with a great idea, a great product, or a great app, you've got 700 million people who are willing to use your product. And let me kind of go back a step. You have a product that has the potential to be bigger than anything in America or anything in Europe, because they don't have 700 million people. So when you think about, there's a point now where Grab's almost as big as Uber, right? Because Grab is targeting 700 million people, right? So it's the same thing as what Carsome or what AirAsia or AirAsia Digital is doing, right? We have a massive regional audience that I think great entrepreneurs are going to tap onto. You build a great business in America, there's only 300 million people. You build a great business in Southeast Asia, there's 700 million people. So I think, we really have such huge opportunities out there to build massive businesses.
And Tony, what is the future hold? And don't say spacecraft and space tourism, because just because Jeff and Elon have gone into space.
I'm going to take one of Kamarul's drones into space, man. Branson texted me to ask him to send me a congratulatory message, which I did, and then said, do you want to come with me on the next ride to space? I'm like, well, one, I don't think my banks will let me go. But even if I did go to space, what are you going to do there? I'm not going to see Patrick Grove and Kamarul and Eric. There's so much happening down on Earth. I said, when we go to the moon, what we're going to do is throw some rocks at each other. Plenty of people throw rocks at me on Earth. So I don't need to go to space. But I said, you go be the pioneer. It's fantastic for humans. It's great that you do that, and allow us all to dream. And then I'll come up with a low-cost version in 10 years. But you kept saying it, and it's fantastic. It's fantastic for Patrick Grove to go out there and raise a $300 million SPAC. That's not easy to do, and that shows the kind of energy and talent that we have in this part of the world. And Patrick, in the same way as Richard Branson, allows us to dream. That someone can go out there and create a SPAC of 300 million. Raising $100 million is hard enough. Raising 300 million. So, we should be positive. You see examples on this call, Eric and Kamarul. We spend too much time being negative. I keep saying that. And we should be positive, and we should build on the successes, and we should correct what needs to be corrected and move forward. This is a journey. This isn't a sprint. It's a marathon. But, this call has motivated me because, while I knew about the SPAC, the enormity of what Patrick has done is pretty damn cool, right? And the enormity of I didn't know Carsome was around for 7 years. I mean, Eric must have been in his nappies. He looks like 10 years old now. So, and Kamarul has done a great thing. So MDEC should be very proud, and happy birthday on your 25 years that you have contributed. You should take credit for this. And it's inspired me. I'm telling you that. I'm even more determined to go out there and kick some goals, being on this conversation. And, I feel okay. I got hair, and Kamarul and Patrick haven't as much. So that I can be as young as them. It's Eric. And we should be positive. But well done, Patrick. It's fantastic when you keep hearing that 300 million. It's not easy to do. And that's something you should be very proud of.
That's a lot of money. Eric, what is the future hold for Carsome? Some people are asking about the subscription model. Maybe one day people don't own cars. Maybe people one day will just rent them like a utility.
So I think we are on track, right? In the sense where we are not looking at just helping people to buy and sell cars. I think our destination, our vision is to really, have Carsome to be the super app where anything about car ownership, you're able to do it with us. I think about Grab, right? I think about AirAsia. There's a lot of point A to point B delivery, and you deliver everything in between. And when you need financing, they come in with e-wallet, the payment. I think we are thinking of the same way of how we envision that end-to-end journey with the customers, with the consumers, that you would eventually own a car, even though you subscribe, and you would need financing, you need the after-sales support, be it an EV or be it just a normal type of cars, right? So we want to be able to cater all of that. And exactly to the point of Patrick, right? It's going to be a massive digital economy in Southeast Asia. massive population, $300 billion in 2025, when you look at Southeast Asia for digital economy. So how much we are kind of basically getting out of that, and to think that we can build out of this in Malaysia. I think that's where we believe, right? From day one when I started the business, we want to dream to become that, and we're getting closer and closer now.
Hey, can I give you guys a cool stat about how amazing and how far Carsome's come? So Carsome, on a good month, sells about 10,000 cars over the internet. That's about 333 cars a day. I did the math. While we've been on this call, Eric has sold 20 cars. I don't know if that includes the Tesla to Tony, but 20 Malaysians have gone to Carsome and bought or sold a car while we've been on this call. That's freaking cool.
Yeah, in the midst of a pandemic as well. Kamarul, the last word for this call belongs to you. What does the future hold for you guys? And I think, what can Malaysia do, about this very exciting future?
Right. Well, for us, our drones will free humanity. Right, our future drones are actually smart aerial robots that do all the mundane and unfulfilling things that humanity are still forced to do. Our drones will do all the things like taking care of, plantation, doing delivery, human transportation, all will be done by drones. Right? And we are moving very fast towards that direction. It's all unmanned. It's all actually autonomous, smart autonomous system, and it's very.
Are you moving vaccines by drone at the moment into the deeper area?
Not in Malaysia, but we are doing this somewhere else. Yeah.
Well, again, Kamarul, thank you. And once again, happy birthday for spending your time with us on this most auspicious occasion. Gentlemen, it was a real honor and a privilege again to speak with all of you, Eric, Kamarul, Tony, Tan Sri, and Patrick. Good luck with all your respective business plans, and hand back to the MC for what was obviously a very enlightening call this morning.
Happy birthday, Kamarul.
Happy birthday, Kamarul.
Yeah, man.
Where's the party?
Thank you very much, Eric, Kamarul, Patrick, and Tan Sri Tony for that honest and candid sharing session with us. What a great opportunity to listen and learn from some of the nation's best entrepreneurs who have paved the way for budding entrepreneurs, whom I'm sure are now more than ever inspired after that insightful session. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to join us for our next session as we discover more about the 5 big ideas that will shape our future. Also, we would love to hear your thoughts. So kindly fill up the survey for each session by clicking on the survey icon below. And we'll see you at the next session soon.